DistroWatch is about to drop Mageia from its major distributions page. On DistroWatch, they have a page called Major Distributions where they list what they consider the 10 major distributions, the ones, I guess, that are most important in the Linux ecosystem. So Mageia is on that top 10 list, that major distributions page on DistroWatch. But the folks over at DistroWatch have decided Mageia really doesn't belong there. It's not that popular of a distro. It doesn't see that much development. So they want to drop Mageia and they want to replace it with something else. They're asking you, the community, what distro should replace Mageia on that list. Let's discuss. So before I get started, full disclosure, this video is probably going to be pretty negative. I don't like being negative. I don't like making negative videos, but quite frankly, I don't like DistroWatch.com. Well, I say I don't like. DistroWatch is a great website for distro release announcements, news, but the things that most Linux users especially use DistroWatch for, they use it for the page hit rankings list, the top 100 page hit ranking list here. And for some reason, many, especially Linux users, but even the computer users that don't run Linux, think that this is actually a legitimate representation of Linux distribution popularity. They really think Manjaro is the most popular Linux distribution on the planet, that MX Linux is the second most popular Linux distribution on the planet, that Mint is number 3, and that Elementary is number 4, and Ubuntu is the 5th most popular distribution on the planet. Ubuntu, I guarantee you, has more installs than the top 4, Manjaro, MX, Mint, Elementary, combined. It's not even debatable. You can say what you want about this list, but Ubuntu is the most popular Linux distribution on the planet, on the desktop, for sure, hands down. Also very, very popular in the server space as well. None of these even have a server image. So Manjaro, MX, they don't even compete in that space, not to mention the IoT and embedded device market and all this. So there's no way any of these distributions, all of them combined, have as many installs as Ubuntu. So right away I can tell you, the list is garbage. The list is garbage just based on that fact alone. And people are going, well, how can you say that's a fact? There's no good metrics on how many people are out there running Ubuntu, just real world experience. When I see Linux out in the wild, and I see people running Linux on their computers, their desktops, their laptops, 9 times out of 10, they're running Ubuntu or one of the Ubuntu flavors. That's just a fact. If they're not running Ubuntu, they're running like a derivative of Ubuntu, like something like Mint maybe, or Elementary. They're pretty popular out in the wild. You do see Mint and Elementary out there. I've never come across somebody out in the wild running Manjaro. Even on the internet, some of these distributions, like in the top 20, you don't see that many people running these things, like even just talking on Linux forums and stuff. So this is not really a good representation of Linux distro popularity. This is a page hit rankings list. That is all. Meaning each of these distros has a page on DistroWatch. This is how many times that page was viewed today. That's all that is. They have no idea how many people installed Manjaro. This is not about, downloading the ISO or anything like this. Is just how many people clicked on the Manjaro DistroWatch page today. And a lot of this, really all it has to do is search engine result pages, SERPs. It is basically your ranking in Google, is what this boils down to. If I do a quick search on Google, well, let me pull up Google, and I do a quick search for Manjaro, for example. We have the manjaro.org website, the main website for Manjaro. The second result is distrowatch.com Manjaro. So the fact that that comes up and the second result for Manjaro in Google, the most popular search engine on the planet by far, the more likely somebody is actually going to click on this page, the distrowatch.com Manjaro page. That's why Manjaro is number 1 in the DistroWatch page hit rankings. If I did the same thing for Ubuntu, Ubuntu.com, Ubuntu's Twitter, Ubuntu and Wikipedia, Canonical.com, the corporation behind Ubuntu. Docker is here, Microsoft Store, Ubuntu on Microsoft. DistroWatch.com is not even on the first page when I search for Ubuntu. That's why Ubuntu is not very high on that DistroWatch page hit rankings list. Again, this list is garbage. If you're thinking that it has something to do with Linux popularity, it doesn't. Ubuntu, by far, the most popular Linux distribution on the desktop. If you want to debate me, you're wasting your time. I'm not even going to talk to you if you don't think Ubuntu is the most popular Linux distro on the desktop. And keep in mind, I'm not an Ubuntu user. I'm not running it. I run Manjaro, which is the number one on the PageHit rankings list. And I can tell you right now, Manjaro isn't even in probably the top 20 most popular Linux distros on the desktop. It just isn't. So the story today is that DistroWatch has this top 10 distributions page, what they call a major distributions page, where they list the 10, what they call major Linux distributions, not necessarily the most popular, because who knows what the most popular Linux distro is. DistroWatch even admits their page hit rankings don't really mean anything, but this is what they consider their 10 major distributions, right? This is what really is the top 10 Linux distributions based on what perceived popularity, historical reasons, maybe because some of these are the base for many other Linux distributions. Who knows exactly what goes into their thinking, but this is what DistroWatch considers their top 10 distributions, and I'll briefly go over it. Mint is the first one, Ubuntu is the second one, Debian is the third one, Mageia was 4, Fedora 5, OpenSUSE 6, Arch Linux 7, CentOS 8, PC Linux OS 9, Slackware 10, and because they didn't include a BSD, they threw in an 11th pick for FreeBSD, which is by far the most popular BSD distro. So, what do I think about that list? I think more than just Mageia probably needs to be dropped from that list. Anyway, they posted this a couple of days ago. Opinion poll: what new distro should be listed as a major project? Quote, DistroWatch maintains a major distributions page where we provide summaries for and history on 10 major projects. This past week, while updating some of the information on this page, we realized Mageia, once highly popular for its ease of use, has been relatively quiet in recent years, seems to have fallen out of the spotlight. With this in mind, we're considering replacing Mageia on the major distro page with one other project, and we have a poll. What new distro should be listed as a major project? So if we drop Mageia, what should replace it? And they list Manjaro, MX, Elementary, Solus, Kali Linux. That's interesting. Other. Okay, and then the last one, just leave Mageia on the page. Okay, so first of all, if the page hit rankings, their top 100 page hit rankings list is complete garbage, I'm going to tell you right now, even worse is their top 10 distribution list here. Are these really the top 10 Linux distributions? I mean, what criteria are we going on here? I mentioned Ubuntu is probably the most popular Linux distribution on the desktop by far. It just laps the rest of the field. So, okay, you have Ubuntu on the list. I can go with that. Debian is an extremely popular Linux distribution. It's what Ubuntu is based off of, but Debian in its own right, very popular Linux distribution, not only on the desktop, but extremely popular in the server market. Yeah, Debian's fine. Let's keep Debian on the list. Fedora is probably the second most popular Linux distribution on the desktop, maybe. I'm just throwing that out there, way behind Ubuntu, but Fedora, I do see instances of Fedora out there people are running. SUSE, yeah, I think SUSE probably belongs on the list. Arch Linux, I agree with that. CentOS, CentOS is a great server distro. I don't know. PC Linux OS has no business on this list. Matter of fact, if you're dropping Mageia off the list, why didn't you just go ahead and take PC Linux off the list too? Because I have never met anybody ever in real life that ran PC Linux OS. Ever. I've been using Linux exclusively as my operating system for 10 years plus. I have never met a single person in real life, in the real world, running PC Linux OS. And even on the internet, I mentioned this, I don't know anybody on the internet, like people that I interact with, talk Linux with, that are running PC Linux OS. I know one guy, a friend of the channel, you guys know Alistair, Present Arms. He has his own custom Linux distro based off of PC Linux OS, the My Trinity PC Linux OS distro. Great distro, by the way. I actually have it on one of my hard drives. Fine distro, but really, other than Present Arms, I don't know anybody that uses this distro. It has no business on the list. If you're dropping Mageia because it's fallen out of favor, get PC Linux OS off the list too. Slackware is the oldest active Linux distribution still with us. It definitely belongs on the list just for historical reasons, so I've got no problem with that. FreeBSD, yeah, if you're going to throw a BSD in there. So about half that list I'm okay with. Half of it's kind of questionable. But really, if you're taking Mageia off the list, get PC Linux OS off the list. And the distros you're contemplating here, replacing Mageia with Manjaro, MX Elementary, Solus, Kali. Kali? And Solus just lost its main dev. Is Solus even seeing any real development? I mean, this is just a ridiculous list. How about Gentoo? Why is Gentoo not on your top 10 major distributions page? That just blows my mind. Gentoo is so much more important of a Linux project than much of what was on that list, to be honest. It's certainly much more important than anything right here. So yeah, if you want to drop Mageia, go ahead, get it off that list. It never belonged there anyway. Gentoo needs a spot on that list, but you know what? Go ahead and get PC Linux OS off that list too, DistroWatch. It doesn't belong there. If you want a good suggestion on what should replace PC Linux OS on that list, how about a truly important project, maybe the most important Linux distribution on the planet right now as far as its goals and basically its purpose? How about Tails? Can we get Tails on the top 10 Linux distribution page? It makes perfect sense to me. I think it would make perfect sense to most people that use Linux. Anyway, kind of a lengthy rant. Mageia being dropped from DistroWatch's major distro page. What should replace it? You guys want to vote in the poll? I didn't vote in the poll. Maybe I should. So I definitely think if you're going to drop Mageia, yeah, you should replace it with Gentoo. Gentoo's not an option. None of this makes sense. I wouldn't replace it with Manjaro, MX Elementary, Solus, Kali. I wouldn't replace it with any of that. All fine projects, all good distros. I like all those distros. I'm running Manjaro. Manjaro is not one of the 10 most important Linux distributions on the planet. I'm going to vote other. But the problem with other is it doesn't let me say what other is. Anyway, it looks like MX is leading the poll with 28%, Manjaro 26%. I don't know. Before I go, this show was made possible by Ansem, Carlos, Chris, Dylan, Leor, Rob, and Tony. They are the producers of the show. They're my highest tiered patrons over on Patreon. This show was also brought to you by all those ladies and gentlemen. You guys see those names on the screen. Those are the supporters of this channel. Without them, none of this would be possible. If you'd like to support my work, please consider doing so over on Patreon. You will find me at DistroTube over on Patreon. Peace, guys.